This essay is a piece I wrote when asked to write about Taylor Swift and her increasing popularity among the younger generation. I worked on this piece in the lead up to the Eras Tour. It explores Swift as religious experience, a musician, and a feminist icon. As you will see, there is not an easy answer to this question. So without further ado, Taylor Swift crosses the Red Sea. Senatorial hearings are often defined by a chorus of clicking pens, tentative sips of water, and the hum of a few restless spectators. Nevertheless, during the exhaustively broadcasted Live Nation hearing, senators traded in their pens for a touch of millennial flair and a number of Taylor Swift quotations. See, the hearing, which more closely resembled an interrogation, was largely about Live Nation's fumbling of Swift's forthcoming megatour, the Eras Tour, a massively advertised production consisting of 52 three-hour performances at the world's largest venues. Come the tour's end, its 156 hours will all but certainly go down as one of the highest grossing as well as culturally important time collections in music history. In my view, the existence of this tour and its resulting Swift-toting bureaucrats exemplify Swift's increasing ubiquity. Throughout the day, each senator took their shot at executing the best deadpan delivery of any Swift excerpt they could. It was an entertaining affair, if not a subtly distasteful and obnoxious attempt at appealing to the American public. Whatever one can say about political or commercial pandering, bad pandering is memorable. What I mean by that is when you witness words so uncomfortable, something so outwardly desperate, a sequence so greatly out of touch that it becomes ironically immersive. In that, I think there is something inherently entertaining, if not an allure that makes any spectator morbidly curious. Yet, the chamber of senators' reading and subsequent nasally spitting of Swift quotes is anything but elusive. It is forgettable and represents some of the worst the internet age has to offer. Now, I can't diagnose whether the handful of senators that quoted Swift that day gained a few points with the 30 and under crowd, but what I can attempt to piece together is Swift's increasing and perpetual ubiquity, the seemingly growing horde of people that don't simply listen to her music, but live her lifestyle and buy into her musical zeitgeist. It is a phenomenon that is explainable as it is not, and one that requires an exhaustive case study of the American public's obsession with celebrity and our corresponding fascination with storytelling. Taylor Swift's narrative does not follow the linear hero's journey, and her discography is anything but the Aeneid. It is rather an eclectic set of tapestries that generally weaves through together popular music of each album's time. Firstly, though, in order to understand what Swift is, we have to understand what she is not. Taylor Swift is not Justin Bieber. Bieber's early career follows the hero's journey in a comprehensive manner, covering each base with such precision that every step comes off as pre-planned, mathematical certainty. Truthfully, 16-year-old Bieber was the puppet at the end of manager Scooter Braun's strings. Scooter, a villain in Swift's tale, is more or less the instigator of Bieber's story, stumbling across a myriad of Bieber's covers in 2007 before reaching out to his mother and jumpstarting both his and prepubescent Bieber's career in the late 2000s. From there, the young phenomenon became one of the most prominent and unrelentingly in-your-face celebrities of the 2010s. The pinnacle of young Bieber's success is his 2011 documentary, Never Say Never, a film that methodically takes the viewer through Bieber's early life, the hardships he had to encounter, and the enduring strength of a 16-year-old becoming the primary income for a pervasive pool of management and promoters. Essentially, Never Say Never is Bieber's origin story and frames the star as both a hero and an inspiration. Whether or not the film's assessment is correct, 12 years onward, there are several ways in which the modern viewer can approach this project. My perspective is partially the angle of sadness. The film acts as a time capsule to an era in which the youth of America was presented with the idea that fame was an achievable dream. In my view, there's a kind of depressing excitement about watching a naive kid get thrust into fame so quickly. Young Bieber didn't get the privilege of being famous. He had to live in the fame, a continuous soaking of impressionable eyes that saw him not only as a celebrity, but a role model of sorts. That is what I find so striking about the Bieber team's early marketing strategy. From the get-go, they presented him as a divine figure in the entertainment world, one with more talent than any combination of spectators could possibly possess. On top of that, his management made the conscious decision to market him as a role model, a hero, without any tangible track record of being heroic. They pointed to him as a concept that every boy should yearn to become, or a thing every girl needed to be around, or simply adjacent to. It takes one look at Never Say Never to understand why Bieber and his marketing strategy were so successful. It's clear, Young Bieber was an Aeneas-like figure to the American public in the 2010s. He managed to be simultaneously human, respectful, and eminently perfect. In turn, it is precisely this reputation and the story that follows, which has kept him around for well over a decade now, garnering a fan base in opposition to Swift's, yet eerily similar. If Bieber's story is defined by interdependence, Swift's story is almost certainly one of public defiance and an image of independence. This perceived independence is clear in the name of her Eras tour, the amount of eras, or musical shifts, Swift's discography has seen is unusual for such an established artist. When a musician tries to shift their sound, they are often left with the scraps of a broken, disjointed record. This is not the case for Swift. Whatever one wants to say about her as an artist, her musical versatility is undeniable. Swift first broke onto the country scene in 2006 with her self-titled LP, Taylor Swift. Years later, she took her country roots and gradually morphed her traditional rural sound into a hybrid of guitar-driven swing ballads and popular songwriting, culminating in what is essentially country pop on Fearless. Her music further transformed on 2012's Red, a supplemental and carefully engineered exploration into broadly appealing less twangy country pop music. From there came 1989, a synth-filled, compressed, and unabashedly popular-sounding record that grabbed Swift 10 Grammy nominations, and, from that, 3 Grammy wins. That said, Swift's discography continued to change, transforming into the electropop reputation and even diving into folk sounds on Folklore and its sister album, Evermore. The point is, Swift's music is ever-changing. There is no end to Swift's metamorphosis. It is continuous, everlasting, and, in many ways, what defines her as an artist. Yet, it's argued that finding any truly impactful influence in Swift's discography is hard. To many critics, if you cut Swift out of musical history, you would largely get the same progression of ideas and sound. While Swift's influence on the next generation of musicians and the industry itself is undeniable, sonically speaking, Swift's impact is marginal. This is no slight to Swift. A work of art does not necessarily need to be influential to be good or even a masterwork. All the same, the simple question one is left to ponder is why some say Swift's influence on music, not the industry, is marginal. Swift is not a risk-taker. Many will point to her recent album Folklore and its small-town indie sound as a commercial risk, one that defines her as a trailblazer of harmonics and a pioneer of the American musical zeitgeist. Yet, on closer inspection, the formula for Folklore was already well established by its release. Long before Swift released her album, the genre had been bubbling up in the indie circuit for years. When the likes of Phoebe Bridgers and Maggie Rogers commercially established themselves as modern forces of female indie pop music and postmodern folk sound, respectively, it was only a matter of time until a larger name like Swift entered into the fray. A move like Swift's exploration of folk is mirrored by Bieber, who quickly grabbed on to the revitalization of Latin popular music in the mid-2010s in his record-shattering remix of Fonzie's Despacito. Neither Bieber nor Swift are genre grifters. It is hard to redefine the sound of music at the top of the charts because, by definition, artists need a winning formula. Rising to the top of the charts with an unproven sound is, largely, unprecedented. Yet, Swift must be commended on her versatility. It is one thing to be second to a trend, and a whole other thing to do it more successfully than anyone that preceded you or followed in your footsteps. Ultimately, I would argue that Swift's metamorphoses sustains her appearance on music's pedestal, but is not necessarily what defines her popularity or widespread fandom. Nevertheless, Swift's nearly 2 decades of success have rendered her too big to fail, a notion that will undoubtedly explain her upcoming ambition, or lack thereof. Oddly enough, even though Swift defiantly took her catalog off Spotify in 2014, it's back now, and continues to defy Scooter Braun and his ownership of her music. It is undeniable that her success is because of the industry she fights. It is because of her ability to adapt to it and change. Today, Swift is the industry. She's become a conglomerate of the system she once fought. Similarly, her independence is partly paradoxical. She is able to give the appearance of breaking new ground while recycling the same tropes, styles, and trends permeating throughout the industry. To put it simply, as long as someone is doing something new, Swift will find success. To step back from the unabashed cultural critique and what Swift is not, I want to make a direct comparison. For starters, the idea of Swift as Novak Djokovic is a compelling one. Theoretically, if every professional tennis player on the planet were to drop their rackets right now and cease to ever play another point again, I would argue that the conclusion of the sport's history would be painfully anticlimactic. Scratch that. The pinnacle of tennis history on its face is painfully anticlimactic, absent of a widespread tennis purge. One could easily contend that the sport's greatest story is the rivalry between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. The two battled each other more times than any other two players in the sport's history, each doing so in their own distinct way. Federer was widely considered to be the sport's greatest player on grass courts, while Nadal's specialty was clay. In particular, Federer's approach to the game is one that produced an unparalleled fluidity of motion, making every match an aesthetically pleasing affair. His ability to turn the ordinary into moments of greatness and the mundane into entertainment is one that, as a writer, I envy and, as a spectator, drool over. An unusually collected composure marked Federer's prime, and his ability to appear unfazed in high-stakes situations infatuated the tennis world, as well as the international market. For a while, it was a challenge to watch any professional sporting event in person and on television without seeing Federer's face in a halftime commercial or plastered upon billboards leading into the stadium. Federer's career, persona, and playing style are everything that tennis ever wanted to be, everything the sport ever could be. Yet, even after more than a decade of back-and-forth victories and more than a handful of matchups that invaded the American media monster, neither Federer or Nadal emerged as the single greatest tennis player of all time, or even of their generation. Such a title belongs to the Serbian Novak Djokovic, who, at the age of 35, is still dominating the international tennis sphere. For a while, Djokovic found himself a side character to the sport's biggest rivalry. However, as the other two faded, Djokovic got stronger. To put it bluntly, Djokovic's stats and accolades trumped that of any other tennis player in history. Even so, it's obvious to any casual spectator that Djokovic's game lacks the visual flair and mechanical poetry found in Federer's racket. Djokovic opts to dictate the pace, patiently starving his opponents and stalking opportunities for open-court play. Moreover, Djokovic's elite return assists his game and enables him to opt out of flashy plays in exchange for high-percentage, fundamental shots. In short, Djokovic has mastered the long and fundamental game both on and off the court, and, in some aspects, he has stolen tennis's fairy tale ending from both of its golden boys. See, the Djokovic-Swift comparison is an easy translation to make for any sports fan or musical outsider. Neither Swift nor Djokovic has fundamentally redefined their craft or what it could be. Each has instead mastered the system they are in, taking shots and releasing music accordingly. Regardless, I feel as if both figures are inherently less exciting than a number of their contemporaries. For me, Swift's work as an artist lacks a moment of pure divinity, an instant of unquestionable singularity, a song that transcends anything I've heard before, or an album that borders on spiritual. To my ears, Swift's musical output is a lot more like a crescendoing journey into nothing, a portfolio that lacks clear direction and instead builds inward, collapsing into what is a catalog of chart-topping, yet sometimes derivative, musical experiences. Yet, if music ended today, Swift would be one of its greatest champions. Much like Djokovic, whether that's a good or a bad thing is up to the individual and what they prefer in their product. To revisit Bieber, I think the problem with marketing him as an eminently perfect figure is that nobody, even the most marketed of celebrities, is legitimately flawless. Eventually, Bieber's narrative gave way in 2014 when the then 19-year-old star was arrested for drag racing and failing a sobriety test. It's clear now that Bieber's brand danced with an all-or-nothing philosophy. In other words, it was the young star's perceived perfection that shot him to the heights of American music fame in the 2010s. Yet, such a reputation is impossible to maintain. Hence, 16-year-old Bieber reaped the fruits of perceived divinity, while the 19-year-old Bieber paid the price of perfection's impossibility. People need to believe in the product they are buying, and after countless controversies culminating in a mugshot, the public simply couldn't buy into the idea of Justin Bieber any longer. It's quite an easy connection to make, to say that Swift never had Bieber's superhuman expectations, nor, possibly because of the former, has she ever had a public fallout like Bieber. In this way, she also diverges from Djokovic, whose longtime persona as an angry guy has certainly hurt his public appeal, and perhaps why more casuals like me don't drool over the guy constantly. Swift, though, under the spotlight of these comparisons, seems to have walked throughout the new millennium on a perfect tightrope of sorts. She is, for the most part, non-controversial. Her music has a wide appeal, and while people have heightened expectations, they are not so unreasonable that she has to perpetually appear a saint. Subsequently, and I must admit, there is something immensely relatable about Swift, something imminently tangible, a different type of divinity, one that feels earnest, earned, and credible. Yet, in roughly 2,500 words of cultural critique and what feels like endless extrospection, I am left unsatisfied with the eclectic, tightrope explanation. I feel that there is little revealing, at that, insightful, about pointing out someone's mass market appeal and stating how that defines their popularity, because, in reality, those things are more correlated than not. That said, I want to offer an alternative explanation that I think best jives with my understanding of Swift and a classical inspection of her iconography. The common answer I hear for why most love Swift is her songwriting and ability to tell compelling stories through song, regardless of fluctuating topics. For some, this sentiment rings true. Just as a handful of people love the stylistically similar Ed Sheeran for his songwriting skill, it is undeniable that both Swift and Sheeran understand how to make a catchy tune appear from nothing. Yet, there's a difference in how the public perceives the two. I offer up that in comparison to Swift, Sheeran's broad and relatable songwriting is more often equated to corporate pop and seldom viewed as his version of Michelangelo's chisel, unlike Swift, whose songwriting is often revered as art and contextualized as a generational gift. This gap in public perception is perpetuated by the Recording Academy, a panel that has offered Swift 46 Grammy Awards and Sheeran 16. With that, I propose the lyric answer has become a bit of a catch-all, buzzword reply, the type of response one gives when they're holding back what truly captivates them, and/or when they lack an accurate answer they simply don't possess. It is no secret that Swift has slowly become a new wave feminist icon. This status is supported by her aforementioned independence, whether that be battling Braun's non-consensual purchase of her music or the formation of her independent production company, Taylor Swift Productions. To many, Swift has and will always radiate a genuine sense of female independence. She reinforces this image through music. Swift has weaponized the feminist anthem to skyrocket up the musical ladder. There is no time for tears. I'm just sitting here, planning my revenge. No one likes a mad woman. You made her like that. Never be so polite, you forget your power. The potency in these lyrics is not seen in their originality, but rather within their repeatability. Perhaps, when pertaining to Swift's predominantly feminine following, these empowering lyrics morph into a type of religious mantra, a kind of interchangeable and echoic rhetoric that is designed to be repeated and shared. It is through this reputation that these mantras become powerful. After a while, they become deeply embedded within the personal and collective memories of the young fans who repeat them. The more the consumer hears and internalizes, the closer they get to the independence they yearn for. In that sense, Swift sells the ambition of female independence by virtue of interchangeable, repeatable, and broad melodic prayer that any creature, male or female, could take solace in. In parallel, I'd like to revisit the idea of political and commercial pandering. The sonic crimes committed by various senators during the Live Nation hearing are reminiscent of a different kind of pandering, religious pandering. It is not uncommon you will see a senator quote the Bible to drum up popularity with an evangelical base. Bible quotes are the glue that holds together the most conservative Christians to Instagram models and an ocean of new wave youth pastors. When a senator quotes the Bible, it is a quiet way of telling another Christian, we have the same values. A smart conservative would leverage the Bible to prop up their campaign. They would transform themselves into a humanistic form of salvation. They would try to appear as if they wholeheartedly lived the life of Jesus, whatever the life of Jesus even is, and offer a path to salvation to a spiritually hungry populace. This longing for a greater understanding of one's morality and a way to control it is the same reason theological followers cram into classrooms to study Leviticus, and the same reason I read and mull over Ovid's Metamorphoses. The Swift-toting senators follow the aforementioned guidelines. They take advantage of Swift and her followers to gain social clout and appeal to their sense of morality. In that way, the culmination of Taylor Swift is most aptly viewed as a modern religious experience. Swift offers salvation to young girls via the prospect of female independence. The moral code she preaches in her songs and reinforces in her actions are the commandments, and her religious prayers are the one-liners, mantras to be repeated until some form of salvation has been reached. The Swift Bible, her independent persona, is her allure, the legendary stories of battling Goliath, the music industry, and her prevailing dignity when faced with oppressive opposition, like Kanye West at the 2009 VMAs. I put forth that many of Swift diehards are equally, if not more, enveloped in Swift mythology in the process of standing atop her mental plane as they are in the music itself. A Christian reads the Bible to understand their God. In the same way, a Swift diehard reads pop lyrics and follows a cultural story to understand Swift and her beliefs. In a sense, I think Swift has become a modern-day Moses, a beacon of light for the next generation of young women searching for their own version of freedom. Only now do I realize my mistake in conventionally trying to understand Swift's universality. The way I see it, attempting to understand Swift's popular ubiquity through her sonic qualities and marketing strategy is like trying to understand the Bible's impact through how good the transitions are. Nothing will be revealed because you are simply looking at it the wrong way. I'd like to end with this. If you ever get the chance to visit the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, wander to the welcome desk, state your name, and politely inquire, "Where is Gold Marilyn, and how do I get to her?" Follow those directions like a prophecy. Soon you will encounter a large print of Marilyn Monroe's headshot over a gold-painted background, a sheen reminiscent of those depicted in medieval Christian art. What Warhol did with Gold Marilyn Monroe was take the essence of religious experience and transfer it to the pop culture of his time. He transformed something as intangible as shared understanding and made it tangible. More specifically, when artist Andy Warhol conceived Gold Marilyn Monroe, he asserted one thing long before such a point could ever be proven. He said that the future of religion and its teachings are found in American celebrities and the pop culture they come from. Swift has followed Gold Marilyn's prophecy in a comprehensive manner, covering each base with such precision that every step comes off as pre-planned, mathematical certainty. Only time will tell if Swift, or pop culture for that matter, will stick around as long as any Judeo-Christian belief. Nevertheless, I must ask, when does a movement become a religion? When does a celebrity become an icon? Does it take the crossing of the Red Sea, or simply a pen, a paper, and a journal full of melodies?